Hi, I'm Ewan Fox and welcome to the latest 4BR podcast interview where I talk to leading musicians and personalities with a link to the brass band world. For this episode we speak with George Rees, who along with his business partner Tom Ensing are the driving forces behind the social media company Bigger Feet Productions based in Linköping in Sweden. The duo work with clients in creative arts and businesses to produce inventive social media content, or cool stuff as they call it, from musicians to watchmakers, music production software to on-land salmon farms. A little while ago, they also linked up with the Swedish champions Gota brass band as they prepared to take part in the European Championships in Stavanger. The result was a fantastic 20-minute documentary feature entitled The Story of the Sound that not only focused on the band's participation, but also asked compelling questions to just why brass bands compete against each other. In addition, it also offered an enticing link to the possibilities effective use of social media holds for bands, competitions, and organisations in reaching out to new audiences. George, great to have you with us. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a musical background in the UK, but how did that become a social media business called Bigger Feet in Sweden?
Yes, good question. Hi, Ewan. Thank you for having me. Well, it's a long story and I'll try and edit it effectively. I go back 36 years now and have always been involved in music from my school days. Singing in choirs particularly was my thing at school, and there's not a million miles of difference between a great choir and a great brass band. So I was always interested in effective team communication in video, in music making, and so there I was making lovely sounds with a choir, and I also got interested in rock and pop music, as you do as a teenager. My dad had a fantastic collection of old records, Supertramp and Pink Floyd and Genesis and a lot of others. Got really into all that kind of stuff, started playing guitars in bands, and set up a small record label for some friends and for me to put out our recordings, our early forays into recording music. And that was kind of what got me started in the professional world of music. So once I left school, I was a choral scholar at university in Leeds briefly, but my choral involvement has been less and less over the years, and my involvement in other forms of music grew, and now I'm involved much more in that side of things. So I got busy making promo videos for bands and for my own music and releases and shows, and that's how I transitioned into video making, really, was by working with the music and trying to tell people how great it was. And that slowly led through to marketing through a phenomenally unsuccessful home studio business where I learned a lot and discovered the world of music technology and all these wonderful companies out there making interesting hardware and software for music professionals. And I eventually was offered a job in Sweden, and I was, like I say, doing so incredibly poorly at making a living at home with my studio and my own music making business. I was having a lot of fun, but not making a lot of money, as I'm sure a lot of musicians will relate to. So I accepted a job with a company called Softube here in Linköping in Sweden about 8 years ago. Within 3 weeks of interviewing for that job, I was here living full time in Sweden and working making videos for social media, telling the world about the interesting and brilliant product made by Softube. And since then, I've been working with other companies in the audio tech world. I set out about 5 years ago with my friend and long-running colleague Tom Ensing, who's a Dutch lad who now lives in Norway. So we're all globetrotters. Making videos for other companies, including a company here in town called Kilohertz, who are the sponsors of our video series, and also Lunacy Audio in California, Baby Audio, who are in Denmark, and a bunch of others. We've been busy in that audio tech world and learning about drum and bass music, as well as EDM and lots of other forms of interesting music, but retaining this general interest in music the whole time. So the last piece of the story that brings us up to the relevance I have here is that we don't just love to make commercials, but we love to tell stories, and we're very interested in diversifying into creative storytelling. So as a video production company, we have the gear anyway. We make these commercials, and we decided we would put together a project where we go out and make these mini documentaries. This is the third in a series of 6 episodes. This one is all about competitive music making, and we thought the European Brass Band Championships would be an excellent case study for competition in music and why it's a thing at all. That surprises some people, I think. But also what wonderful things it does for the community and for the standard of music making. So there we are, we're out in the world trying to make interesting, creative stories about music and sound and all the wonderful things that it does in our lives.
Well, how then did you link up with Gota Brass Band? Because they, of course, they are the Swedish champions. And did you know anything about the competitive? I don't know, if you were in Leeds, you're in the heartland there, the brass band. Did you know anything about the competitive world of brass banding before you headed to Stavanger?
Sure. Yeah, just a little bit. And touched on it, or some of it in the video. I have behind me on the shelf the DVD of Brassed Off. The movie was my sort of first serious entrance into the world of brass banding, and I understood from the plot in the movie that competition is an important driving force and an important kind of community glue in the brass banding world. And then the first time I was at the EBBC was 2 years ago in Malmö, when my partner, my girlfriend Hannah, bought me tickets as a birthday present. She knew I loved brass because I wouldn't shut up about Danny Boy, and she took me along to the championships in Malmö 2 years ago, and I was just blown away. It's such a cool thing to hear such a high standard of music from all across the continent, and the competition element of it specifically is so fascinating because, of course, I've been to a 1,001 concerts, and they're brilliant and exciting, but going to hear a list of 15 or 14 bands playing the same piece over and over again just fascinates me, because not only are they all brilliant, but they're all very different when you really start to pay attention.
Interesting.
So that was the first thing for me.
Well, how did they get that link then to Gota? Did you approach them, or did they approach you, or did it come through the organisers? Well, how did that link then come to pass and then get you then to Stavanger?
So we knew we wanted to make this episode, this mini documentary that you mentioned, and the EBBC was the focus, the case study, as I'd been 2 years before and enjoyed it so much. So we thought we could just buy tickets and go along and look from afar, and that might be interesting, but we bet there's stories inside the story. And so we got in touch through some mutual friends over here in Sweden. It's quite a small country, population-wise. We're a couple of folks in the band in Gota Brass who have been involved with the concert hall in Malmö, and so is one of our producers here at Bigger Feet, and they've known each other, so we were able to get in touch and ask if we could pop down for a rehearsal the week before. So we were there to see their kind of final weekend before the contest, and then we didn't travel with them, but we met up with them in Stavanger and did a little bit of behind the scenes and tried not to interrupt their flow and their focus too much. But they were very accommodating indeed. I think they were more willing than I would have expected. I'd have been telling all these flies to buzz off, but they were very accommodating of us.
Well, right at the beginning, you said you admitted to be a bit of a skeptic to start, but did you find that changed as you went along? Because you're talking about why bands really want to compete against each other, because making music, as you say, is a very subjective thing. Your appreciation of music is very subjective. 2 examples I think you give the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Which one would you choose between those two when you said at the beginning? And it's a bit like that with the bands. If you pick between the Black Dyke Band or the Foden's Band or the Ikanger Band or Gota Brass, something may appeal to you as an individual, but how then do you make that into a competitive element where you can make that differentiation? So what did you find out basically about that subjective nature and how it becomes much more objective when you look at it in competition terms?
Sure. Well, I should start by saying that, of course, really, it's a silly example because there's an obvious right answer with NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. I think we all know the answer to that one.
Don't ask me. Don't ask me.
The truth is, I think there's a degree to which competition in music freaks people out. It's something that seems a bit odd to some outsiders. And I'm sure it's absolutely normal to most of the brass band community at this point, because it's a bedrock of the movement. But for the average music listener, the average music maker, competition can be quite threatening. The idea that there can be a right and wrong when it comes to music, or there can be good or worse or better, or it's a slightly odd concept, I think. And beginning the story in that place just allowed me to be open-minded and inquisitive about how exactly the issue of objectivity is approached in competition, and whether it is stressful and competitive in a negative way for the community, or whether, as I found, in fact, it's a very positive driving force behind standards and enjoyment. The thing that I think I fear with competition, and this came up in the video also, is that if you pit yourself against others, you're trying to establish an objective right and wrong, or a good and bad in music, and that feels wrong. I just want us all to have a good time and to be happy and to make the music we want to make. But I think I discovered for myself in the making of this video that really the competition in brass banding isn't taken terribly seriously as competition by the bands. They all want to do their very best and they all want to win, but the issue is not who comes first, who comes third, who comes 15th. The issue is how brilliant can we all be? And the issue of competition seems to just be a framework and a mechanism by which to drive that excellence, if I understood correctly. And I'm sure there may be many people who would pick me up on any kind of number of details in that, but it doesn't seem like the competition is nasty or aggressive or competitive, really. It just seems like it's a really brilliant way of gamifying the making of brilliant music and driving everyone to have more fun and to make more wonderful music.
You said that, when you looked at it, the objective things within brass banding, did you find them puzzling? Because, as you say, you got 15, high class amateur music making ensembles, many of them playing at a level which professional ensembles are really envious of. Yet they all play the same piece of music, so 15 performances of one piece, and then they all pick a piece that really shows off their own individual talents. But then you've got the judges, which you hide in a box or in a tent in this case. You have a draw, which means that it's very regimented. You have test pieces, and there's something about it which has got that balance between them both, the enjoyment and the ultimate quality of the music making, but still that very rigid competitiveness, which somehow speaks in a very different way that you addressed.
I do think it's excellent and important that some gesture at least is made to blind judging. I wondered to myself, and maybe you can tell me, Ewan, do the judges not hear the reaction to each band as they come on stage? And can they not hear, oh, that's one of the big ones? I wonder how absolutely blind they can possibly be. But the gesture at least to drawing and to numbering the bands and not naming them, that proves to me as an outsider, as a tourist really in the scene, that this is
You've
about
opened a can of worms.
listening.
You really have
Well,
opened
I'm
a can
sure,
of worms.
right?
There is, as you say, there's a thing, as I think many people have examined, a thing called unconscious bias, isn't it? But you tend to find in the brass banding world, people tend to say that if they could see a band, they would have an unconscious idea of what they believe they're going to receive in a performance from them. But the same thing really applies orally as well. Because you can actually hear in the audience, you can hear that sense of anticipation. You can actually hear people shouting out the band's names. When it comes to the own choice element, it's a little bit strange indeed. You've got the set test, which I think is a much more regimented part. But when it comes to the own choice, really everybody just about knows, because a lot of the people know exactly what the bands are going to be playing as their own choices weeks before the competition. So it's a bit of a balancing act with regard to that. But did you find that fascinating, that in its way, that endeavour, that almost collective endeavour for excellence has then got to be marked against fellow competitors?
Well, sure. And the only reason I brought that sort of quibble up, and I'm sure there's plenty, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about them, but is to say that I don't think as an audience member that it matters that much to me. It's important that the gesture is made, and then there's this wonderful situation where you try to pay attention just to what you're hearing, just to the performance. I think the judges must have a wonderful time with it. I know enough about music from my various past careers and present careers in relation to music to know that there is an objective good and better and best. We're all practicing every day because we want to do better. That suggests that there is some pinnacle to aim towards. And that might be in technical prowess, it might be in musicality, it might be in group togetherness. But there are all these different factors upon which you can meaningfully make a judgment. And I'm sure then there's plenty of interesting arguments to be had about who's weighing this thing too heavily against that thing, and who's got the right balance of priorities when it comes to technique versus musicality versus balance. But I think the exercise in itself is fascinating, and it seems to me that in creating that pageant and creating that modicum of objectivity, you create a situation that is so much more fun than just a big group gala concert could be.
It was interesting at the end of it where you filmed the band waiting for the results. And there was an expectation, as you said, before they went to the event, you asked them, could they win? And they were very realistic about where they stood in the competitive side of it. But when it came to the actual music making, their ambition was almost unlimited. They just wanted to play as best as possible. And the sense of achievement that they had and accomplishment that they had at the end of it, it was added to because, of course, they beat some of the favourite bands who were actually there. That really was, as you said, was the ultimate expression of why those people spend so much time rehearsing and practicing and being committed financially, etc., to go to that event, represent their band, because at the end of it, there was no great financial reward for them doing it and no great worldwide global recognition. Yet in their own world, they had done something which they felt was very musically worthwhile.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Gota Brass were kind enough to share with us a video from a hotel room 2 years ago in Malmo when they achieved their highest result of 9th place in the championships. And contrasted to this year's 10th place finish, the elation was extraordinary. And this year they were very happy, I think, to finish 10th because it represents a great achievement for a band that does not practice year round and does not get together as regularly as some of the other bands do. They're very proud of themselves, I think, as much as Swedes ever are. They're very reserved people, very, very calm. But I think that's exactly it. The issue is not, did we come 9th? Did we come 10th? Did we come 4th? It's just, did we feel that we did the best we could? And did we feel that we pushed with the momentum that the competition offers us to go beyond what we have achieved before musically and as an ensemble? And I feel that probably all the bands, barring the occasional bad day or whatever, I bet most of the bands come to the competition and leave it feeling incredibly proud of themselves, whether they came first or 15th.
You'd have to come to some of the more British competitions. Sometimes the attitude is slightly different depending what the result is there. But I think you could actually see that with Gota especially. And if you were there throughout the day, the people like the Italian brass band and the progress that these bands have made at this event over the competitive side of it has improved them, but the taking part, etc., as well has also done that. Interestingly, right at the beginning of the conversation, you said that, you had the example of you've seen the film Brassed Off, but for many people, that still colours their perception of what brass bands are and what they represent. So through your work, through your professional work, how can brass bands almost get rid of that stereotype? How can they use social media? How can they do it so it leads a change in that perception? And if by doing so, what are the real pitfalls that they've got to be wary of in doing it? Because social media has such a positive thing to offer, but of course there's also a darker side as well. So do you think that bands should really be embracing social media much, much more in this modern age?
Well, I've got to say, I think we all should, in one way or another. It's here to stay. I think we can be sure of that. But it's always been the way that the media colours our understanding of things, the way that the popular narrative gets presented, colours the general public's understanding of any enterprise, whether it's business or arts. So I think stories are very interesting. That's basically my mission statement.
Yeah.
And every one of these bands has its own story, and every one of the members of the bands have their own story. And of course, realistically, not every band and every person in every band is going to get equal coverage and equal virality and interest from the wider world. Some superstar players are going to break through onto the sort of household name stage much more than others. And some bands will be higher profile than others. And that can come down to the craziest things, like, the colour of the jackets are more, they pop better on camera or whatever, right? But realistically, I think we can all do more than we do, generally speaking. The average person in the average job or the average enterprise, musically or otherwise, we can do more to tell the world about what we do. And that's really all that we try to do here at Bigger Feet. We try to find the right way to honestly and impactfully tell the world the story of whatever it is that we're covering. So in our commercial work, it's a product. It's we want to sell more of this thing. Can you help tell the world about the features or about the emotional benefits that it might bestow? And we come up with a script and a set of visuals that we think will help to convey the message that we want to convey, the story, the narrative. Same thing is true with bands. I think to some extent the music speaks for itself, the performance speaks for itself. So any band that can get a halfway decent camera and microphone into their rehearsal space and put out some documentation of the amazing work that they do, I think they will find that that's a fun and beneficial thing. And I think that all the organisations around brass banding, and I'm discovering that there are some, they're really doing some wonderful work and making quite big things happen. I think they can embrace in the right ways the opportunities of traditional media and more modern media to disseminate the wonderful story, the great things that are going on. The dangers, of course, are there, and I think one of them is trivializing and sensationalizing the work. So one instinct just to get the most visibility possible is to sensationalize, to tell lies essentially about this, band has all this drama, or this particular player is some sort of magnificent superstar that perhaps they aren't. I think it's a good thing to find a balance between honesty, integrity, and the management of the story. You don't want to just tell lies for the views, but I think the only real danger beyond that is it costs time and it costs attention, and there are other things to spend that time and attention on, and so it's not something to get obsessed over.
Do you find
it's a powerful, positive tool?
Yeah. Do you find that there's parallels then within the musical world, within the business world then? Because with Big Feet, I've seen you've done things with a watchmaker, etc., Salmon Farm. There are those, as you say, the story to tell about the people themselves who were in those organisations, what vision they got, what ambition they've got, what positivity they've actually got. And that must be something that, do you feel that brass bands need to really bring out more? Rather than look at inwards and saying it's all about, as you say, the arcane world of competition, when music making really can be, and brass music making can be enjoyed by people from 8 to 98 years of age, and encompassing, brass bands, I'm quite sure, can play NSYNC and Backstreet Boys if anybody wants to do an arrangement of it, because we play Berlioz and Bach and Mozart, so why not do those as well? So if we've got the ambition to do that and tell the right story, that can only be done in a positive way.
Certainly. I think that's always my instinct, is that the people are the most interesting thing of all. And in the case of wonderful art, the work that they produce is also fascinating in and of itself. But to the average audience member who perhaps isn't as nerdily interested in music as you or I are, the human interest is tremendous in the story of people working as hard as they do to achieve the standard that they do in something. I think people being excellent at things is always a fascinating story. So yes, you mentioned we worked with a watchmaker here in town, Marcus Malm, who has done some amazing things with military style watches. He's connected with the Swedish Air Force here and done a bunch of interesting work, collaborations with different regiments and sections that connect to his life story, having grown up near the airbase and been interested in planes as a kid. And I went to Norway to work with a salmon farm there, and yes, it's onshore salmon farming. So they have these enormous tanks, and there's a technical story there that's quite interesting. There's an environmental story that's quite interesting. But for me, the far more interesting thing is why are you doing that? What's of interest to you as a person about that? And there's people who deeply care about the welfare of the fish. There's people who deeply care about the supply chain for food and future sustainability of the human race. And there's deeper stories in all of this stuff. So when it comes to band people, I often think about the Netflix documentary Drive to Survive, which has done such tremendous things for Formula One. And some people listening, I'm sure, will be more familiar with it than others. But essentially, it's a fly on the wall watch everything behind the scenes of the world of Formula One, and you wouldn't believe what a wonderful, interesting set of things are going on. There's a lot of human drama, of course, but there's unbelievably competitive people doing an unbelievable job at interesting things. And just getting to see that has brought brand new audiences to that sport. And I feel the same about brass banding. It's tremendous people doing tremendous things, and you don't need to do much more than honestly point a microphone and a camera at this, and people beyond the traditional brass banding audience will go, wow, that's incredible. What a brilliant thing. I didn't know it was like that. And some of the things that are most interesting for me in the Formula One documentary is the kids in the go-karts and the story of their parents driving here and driving there and raising them up through the system to get them to their dream. And brass banding's just the same. There's practice to go to, there's after school this, there's extra practice, and people are putting in the hours from a very young age to grow up through the ranks and become spectacular world-class musicians. It's represented to some extent at the EBBC with the youth sections and the additional programming. There's a wonderful, wonderful story to tell about how music can touch people's lives and make their lives heavily fulfilled. I think there's a lot to talk about, and to some extent, certainly with the Swedes, there's a concept called Jantelagen, the law of Jante, and it's a sort of a mythical thing. But the idea is you're never supposed to be really proud of yourself. You're never supposed to say, oh, I did so brilliantly, I'm great. So I think that gets in the way of the storytelling a bit. I don't think Göteborgs would ever go out of their way to produce a story about how good they are. But they should, and so should all these bands, and so should all these players be very proud of what they do and of what they achieve, and to whatever extent they feel comfortable telling the world about it, whether through their own camera phone or through more produced work like the video we've made. I think it's a very positive thing.
And for the future then, I know you had great help, and people such as World of Brass allowed you to do the filming, etc., and to take some of the production work that they did there as well. For the future, more collaborations, both in the musical and business sectors for yourself. What does the future hold for your company? And hopefully, will you return to the brass banding world in the future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly an ambition for us, is to cover this more deeply, and other areas that we're looking at with this show as well. As I said, this is episode 3 of 6, and we're touching in on a few other worlds and stories within music and sound. And every single one, we've found fascinating people doing brilliant things, and we've wanted to talk to them for another extra month or 5 and spend more time with them. And so that's a dangerous thing. We're limited by our capacity and by our budgets and by our ability to make it happen. But all of these areas and many beyond them are of interest. Like I say, stories are interesting. And there are a lot of stories out there of good people doing good stuff, even just within music. So more specifically, what the future holds for us is the next episode is about reverbs and ambience in music through mechanical reverbs and all the way through into software and modern reverb systems. Our 5th episode is about childhood music making. We're following a percussion group in Louisville who had actually a viral video hit about 10 years ago that really brought them onto the scene with a Led Zeppelin cover that was shared through
that's more like it.
Page's Facebook page. And so learning about how putting kids into a collaborative music making environment can help them to grow and change and become themselves. We're looking forward to making more of these things and really digging into interesting issues in the world of music. And as for brass banding, I mean, we're fascinated by it altogether, and mainly just because the music itself is so fabulous. I'm sure you'll nod your head and agree with me on this, that there's nothing quite like a terrific brass band. The depth of sound and the variety of sound and of emotion, and it really gets me. So that's a very positive incentive for us to keep finding reasons to get back involved with brass banding. But like I say, we're really just dipping in as tourists. We're looking over the fence and going, "Oh, that's brilliant!" And we appreciate everyone's accommodating attitude to us being there and poking our lenses in their faces. Everyone was very, very pleasant with us.
Well, it's been brilliant to have you involved. It's great to find out more about what you were doing there as well. The inspiration behind what was the story of the sound and the backstage at the world's biggest brass band competition. You can catch it on YouTube. Please go there as well. If you want to find out more about Bigger Feet Productions, go to www.biggerfeet.com. You've got so much stuff on there, as I said, everything from watchmaking to salmon farming, on land salmon farming. Blimey, that's something new indeed. But George, many thanks indeed for your time, and we really look forward. We'll make sure that there's a link back to the documentary as well that is put on there. And please let us know when the other ones are coming out in the series, because I'm quite sure it's going to make for fascinating viewing.
Sure,
George, many thanks indeed, folks. And we look forward to it. And you've got to subscribe, is it? We have to ourselves, and that would be fantastic if you do that. George, many thanks indeed.